Jack is a smart person. He lives in a big house, but his neighbor is very bad. Ah, such a boring paragraph. Bloop. What? Jack's a knowledgeable person? He lives in a gigantic house, but his neighbor is sinister? Oh, wow! Hello, my name is Maddie from POC English, and in this lesson we are going to learn some cool alternatives to boring words. Are you ready? Let's start. The first word which is boring and is very overused is smart. Smart, or some people even use wise, but wise and smart are kind of boring. What else can we use? Well, we can say bright. Bright, which means smart and quick to learn. For example, they are bright children, always asking questions. They are bright children, always asking questions. Instead of smart and wise, you can also use ingenious. Ingenious, which means very clever and skillful. Ingenious. For example, she proposed an ingenious solution to the problem. She proposed an ingenious solution to the problem. It means she proposed a very intelligent, very clever solution to the problem. A formal alternative to smart or wise can be knowledgeable. Knowledgeable, which means someone who knows a lot. Someone who has a lot of knowledge. He is the only knowledgeable professor at our university. He is the only knowledgeable professor at our university. I want to do a thesis with him. He's the most knowledgeable professor I know. So instead of smart and wise, you can use bright, ingenious, knowledgeable, a bright kid, an ingenious solution, a knowledgeable professor. Another very boring adjective, in my opinion, is big. Big. Or if something is very big, you say enormous. Big or enormous. What else can we say instead of big or enormous? Before I teach you the alternatives, let me say something. There is nothing wrong with using big or wise or smart or enormous. They are fine. But if you want to improve your vocabulary, you should probably start learning some synonyms and alternatives to simple and everyday words. So let's start with the alternatives to big or enormous. You can say gigantic. Gigantic. Gigantic means very big, very huge, enormous. For example, they bought a gigantic house in the suburbs. They bought a gigantic house in the suburbs. Another alternative to big is tremendous. Tremendous. Very interesting, right? Well, tremendous means a very large, a very big amount of something. It usually collocates with the word amount. Tremendous amount of something. For example, shush! They are making a tremendous amount of noise. They are making a tremendous amount of noise. And one more alternative to big or enormous is immense. Immense, which means extremely large in size. Immense. For example, he inherited an immense amount of money. He inherited an immense amount of money. It means when his father died, an immense amount of money was given to him. So instead of big or enormous, you can say gigantic, tremendous, or immense. A gigantic house, a tremendous amount of noise, an immense amount of money. Another very boring and very overused adjective, in my opinion, is little. Little. Well, little means small, right? But what else can we say instead of little? You can say teeny or tiny, or even use them together. Teeny tiny. Teeny or teeny tiny means something very small. I only had a teeny tiny slice of cake. I only had a teeny tiny slice of cake, teeny tiny. Another alternative to little or small is minute. Minute. Listen, guys, it's not minute. No, minute. Minute means extremely small. For example, you should read the contract in minute detail. You should read the contract in minute detail. It means you have to pay attention to every small, minute detail on the contract. And one more alternative to small or little is minuscule. Minuscule. But what does it mean? Minuscule? It means very little, very small. For example, I only had a minuscule piece of toast this morning. I only had a minuscule piece of toast this morning. I'm so hungry right now because I had a minuscule piece of toast. So instead of little or small, you can say teeny or tiny or teeny tiny, minute or minuscule. Teeny tiny slice of cake, minute detail, minuscule piece of toast. Before we continue, if you want to receive the full list of these words with their synonyms, with their example sentences, in a PDF file for free, all you need to do is to give me your email address. But how? Go to the description of this video, click on the link to my website, type in your email address, and click subscribe. You will receive the lesson summary of this video and every other videos when I post them on YouTube for free. Now, let's move on. What can I say instead of I like? Well, it's very boring to say I like all the time, right? What other alternatives can we use? Instead of like, you can say admire. Admire, which means to respect and approve of something or somebody. To admire something or to admire somebody. For example, I admire him for his determination. I admire him for his determination. Wow, you are awesome. You are such a determined man. I admire you. It means I respect him and I approve of him. Next is appreciate. To appreciate something. One meaning of appreciate means to say thank you, but here appreciate has a different meaning. It means to realize how good something is, to enjoy something, to like something. I always appreciate a funny joke when I'm out with my friends. I always appreciate a funny joke when I am out with my friends. It means I like to hear a funny joke when I am out with my friends. In this way, we can have fun, right? And one more alternative to like is to say fancy. I like, I fancy. To fancy something means to want something, to like something. For example, do you fancy a cup of tea? Do you fancy a cup of tea? Now, this expression, to fancy something, is a very British expression. Do you fancy a cup of tea? I have also heard in a movie that instead of a cup of tea, British people say cuppa. Do you fancy a cuppa? Or even not do you? Fancy a cuppa? So if you are British, let me know. Is that correct? Fancy a cuppa?
Fancy a couple then, mate?
Yeah, why not?
Fancy a couple then, mate?
Yeah, why not? So instead of I like, you can say I admire, I appreciate, or I fancy. I admire him. I appreciate a funny joke. I fancy a cup of tea. And the final boring word of the day, bad.
Bad.
Well, instead of bad, what else can we use to make it less boring? We can use despicable. Despicable, which means very unpleasant, very bad. This reminds me of this animation. Have you seen it? Despicable Me? I really liked it as a kid. I also like it now. He is a despicable human being. He is a despicable human being. A despicable human being. A very unpleasant, a very bad human being. Instead of bad, you can also say sinister. Sinister, which means evil, very bad. Sinister. She has dark, sinister eyes that make you nervous when she looks at you.
She has dark, sinister eyes that make you nervous when she looks at you.
Sinister. Instead of bad, you can also say wicked. Wicked, which means bad and morally wrong. Wicked. He was a wicked ruler who murdered his own people. He was a wicked ruler who murdered his own people. He was wicked. Very bad. So instead of bad, we can say despicable, sinister, wicked. A despicable human being, sinister eyes, wicked ruler. And that's it, guys. If you have enjoyed this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to my channel, click subscribe. See you.